Jess, thank you so much for your time and joining us here on Podium. And I guess we should start with the most recent addition to your collection, a lovely bronze medal from Tokyo. Just take us back to that time in the Japanese capital, your experience first, just overall of being there at Worlds.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me today. I've been looking forward to this since Hannah reached out to my agent and yeah, I was happy to be on the podcast. So, Tokyo was pretty awesome. I think I'm one of the few athletes, well, there is a bunch of us that is lucky to have returned back to Tokyo since the Olympics. So, I think for all of us, when Tokyo World Champs was announced, it was like this opportunity to have what the Olympics should have had in a way. So yeah, I think kind of just building through the rounds of the 1500 towards that final and sort of getting to experience the crowd each night and experiencing them kind of grow into the championships too. Like I think from night one to night four, when my final was, it was quite a shift up in intensity of the crowd and walking out onto the track right after the semi-final of the men's 400 where the Japanese athlete made it through was pretty insane just to sort of be like, wow, back in 2021, you could hear a pin drop in this stadium when they had us on our marks. And we're running out to the roars of the entire crowd behind their home athlete. So, yeah, I think it was a really, really fitting return. And if I look back at the athlete I was in 2021, to be coming home with a bronze medal from the World Championships is a huge step in my career and shows all the growth that I've been through in the last 4 years. So I'm pretty stoked with it, and it's a special symbol of kind of like how things have gone in the last 4 years.
And I think your shift has been astronomical. You know, you were always there and thereabouts. You've always been a high quality athlete. And then, you know, if you really look at the last 12, 24, 18, 12 months, all the way through to that final in Tokyo, when you really went for it, there were no limits. You have been for the last year the person to try and challenge Faith Kipyegon and get anywhere near her, and it's been really impressive to watch that shift. Does it feel totally bizarre to have been able to push yourself to those limits?
In one hand, it does. Like, I've kind of definitely exceeded a lot of my own expectations. And I think if you told me when I was like 14 or 15 that one day I'd have an Olympic silver medal, a world bronze, and have run 350, I don't think I would have believed that. But at the same time, Faith is still so far ahead of the rest of us that it's kind of like we still can't catch up, even with like astronomical growth and development and things like that. It's like she's always still like 5 steps ahead kind of thing that it's like kind of just keeps it like, okay, yeah, it's really, really cool what we're doing, but there's still more steps to take that kind of like keeps you distracted about like perhaps how much progress has been there. And just like always leaves you wanting a little bit more. So it's really cool to sort of reflect on where I've gotten to, but in the scheme of it, it doesn't feel like I'm necessarily like making those jumps when you're coming up against one of the greatest of all time and a generational talent like Faith.
But you're back in Australia now, aren't you, Jess? And you're making history for Australia in athletics all the time. You're the first Aussie to win a 1500 meters medal at the World Championships, male or female. So what's the reaction been like for you? Because I know you're talking about you doesn't feel like you're making those jumps, but I mean, at home, surely you're being celebrated for your achievements.
Yeah, it's been really nice. It's especially I feel like the coverage for this World Championships for us was a big step for Australian athletics. Like coverage back home was awesome with the time zone only being we were 1 hour behind in Tokyo. So kind of having like something that everyone could follow in real time and relate to in the moment, I think has made a really big like landing in Australia. So kind of coming home was really cool and even like I was recognized by the air hostesses on the plane for the first time, which I was like, it was an Australian airline. Like I flew with Qantas. That's who Australian Athletics like flies us with. But it was just like, oh wow, that's like never happened before. So I think just like things like that do make you realize, okay, like everyone at home is a massive part of this. And I think having a world champs on a very similar time zone compared to when we run in diamond leagues in Europe in the middle of the night back here, it just made it so much more relatable. And we've got some young stars coming through like Gout Gout that have just put us on the map. And I think then people tune in and they're like, oh, we're winning medals in the high jump and the discus and the 1500. And it's kind of just showing, okay, athletics is like really alive and well in Australia. So I'm glad I can play my part. It's pretty cool to have Claudia Hollingsworth is coached by Craig Mottram. So he was in the warm-up area with Claudia over the championships, and I sort of had heard along the grapevine through some media that I'd done following the 1500 that I was the first distance medal since he medaled in Helsinki. And I kind of got to tell him that, and it was like this moment we both had where it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. And it's like 20 years, 22 years removed, but like we should have more as a country that has the depth that we do. And I think both of us are pretty confident that more medals are on the way for Australian middle distance running. It's just taken like some time to kind of to get there and to sort of have that like, well, if she can do it, we can do it kind of moment. So yeah, it's been really special.
That I was just thinking, Rich and Hannah, we're so lucky actually living in a European time zone. Like we're probably quite, we don't realize how good we've got it in terms of generally it's like always on quite a decent time zone for us, isn't it? It's so interesting hearing that, Jess, you talking about the engagement from the Australian public. And I felt that on social media, actually. I saw so much Aussie stuff and like reaction clips and like people were getting so into it, which was awesome to see. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about Faith Kipyegon, because I thought that was fascinating, like that kind of how you balance being at your absolute best as an athlete, but knowing that there's still someone, as you say, a generational talent who is like literally a couple of steps ahead. Like, do you find that difficult to balance in your mind of saying, like, not trying to compare against her, but knowing you're doing all the right things, but what is then the next step to try and challenge that next bit?
I think it's like I am quite a logical person, and I have a pretty good understanding of what we're doing in training and the splits and stuff that it takes to run in the wheelhouse that Faith has. So I think for me, I just kind of go back to, I'm like, okay, what do I have to do to close the gap? And it just means like sometimes I probably like overrun some training sessions because I'm like thinking like, well, if I want to have a chance with Faith, it's like 61s just have to become normal in terms of like what we're looking at for a 1500-meter split. And it's like kind of just
Hannah's face.
It's mad. It's mad. I'm glad I retired. It's fine.
It is. It's just like kind of going back to those stepping stones and kind of just trying to piece together what it takes to even get into the same stratosphere as Faith. And it does like it is quite different just rewiring your brain to sort of be like, well, if I want to have a chance or I want to try and level up from my bronze and my silver that I have in my collection, like this is just kind of what it takes. And I am pretty lucky that I think foundationally I have some really good strength behind me in that like I'm very durable. So when my mind wants to do these things like running 61s over and over and over again, my body is also responding quite well, and it's not letting me down when I'm asking it to do some pretty extreme training. So I've been quite lucky in that respect that it just kind of encourages me to try and close that gap to Faith. But it's really a cool thing to think about with our pole vaulter to Curtis Marshall. A commentator asked me if I'd had a chance to ask Curtis about what it's like to also be up against like Mondo and the generational talent that he is. And it's kind of like competing for the minor medals is kind of like a gold medal for both of us in a way. It's like when you're up against someone that just elevates the sport with the men's pole vault and the women's 1500 over and over again, it's kind of like, well, if I just keep going on my own path of self-improvement, like I'm going to be pretty satisfied with my progress. And, you know, maybe one day I can have a perfect day when they maybe have an A- day kind of thing. So you just got to give yourself a chance and kind of keep believing that one day it's possible. And I think that just gets me out the door every day. I think it would be a little bit harder if you just kind of concede and step back and be like, well, I can't quite do that. So what's the point? I think I'm pretty good at just sort of looking at like, well, I wouldn't have this mindset if it wasn't for Faith. And that growth and development that I've had is definitely from how high she has set the bar. But yeah, without that, I don't think I'd have the motivation to get out the door as much as I do. So it's, I think we owe her a lot.
No, and well, I think it's a great mindset to have, and maybe we'll touch on it later. But the strength of the Australian women, and that must be motivating to almost try and stay on top of that pile. But I'm wondering, you know, if we look really at this summer, and that mindset you took into Tokyo, but the race before it in Zurich, where you faltered in the last 50, 80 meters or so, did that challenge that mindset you wanted to take into Tokyo of pushing for the lead and for a medal?
Bolted is a very nice way to put that. Whatever happened in Zurich. Um, yeah. I think it definitely did initially. Like it rocked me a little bit immediately afterwards. And I think I'm just very, very lucky in that I have my dad around me as my coach and my husband traveling with me all the time now. And then my training partner Archie. Like my immediate bubble was so positive and very much like we couldn't get to the bottom of quite what had happened in Zurich beyond, okay, I just purely oversent it and that it went somewhere I'd never been before. So I think when we couldn't come up with an answer and I came off it okay, I trained well the following Sunday. So uh, just under 72 hours afterwards, I trained really well down in Chiavenna. So I think once we kind of got through that Sunday session, we'd all had a bit of a thought process about what was that. And we couldn't get clear cut answers. We were kind of like, okay, we just oversent it. Try and forget about it. Very, very hard to do because it's like your last race before a world championships. But I think I had an opportunity in the rounds, especially our semi-final that was quite fast over the last 800, particularly the last 600, just to see that, okay, that might have been a one-off thing. Like, I think I'm okay here. But I think I had spent the whole year kind of preparing for that final in Tokyo and visualizing going with faith and whatever that looked like, whether it was fast from the gun or a slow build into the race and pretty fast from a long way out. Like I knew it was going to be more than a 400-meter sprint, just the way faith runs. So I think I had done so much prep in the 364 days outside of Zurich that it was like, okay, I'm just going to commit. I've done this part and I know how to run hard. So try and forget about Zurich.
When you talk about visualization, Jess, is it always the 1500 and faith that you've been thinking about in the build up to Tokyo then? Because obviously you did do the double and I'm wondering the 800-15 double. I know Hannah probably wants to ask whether you wanted to do the other double you could have done. But just focusing on what you did do, how did you find it? How did you find it logistically? In terms of the fact that the warm-up track obviously wasn't near the hotel, wasn't near the stadium, and would you do it again?
I think so. With the visualization piece, is like it's quite simple when the main player in our event is Faith. To guarantee that she's going to be on that start line in Tokyo. I think you have a lot of other what ifs with does Gudaf Segai choose the 1500? Which in that case, I'm like, well, it's really a strength race because we'll go out crazy. And that is like something that I can fall back on quite simply. Like when it is a time trial, that's like kind of been my ammunition in the past. I think the ambiguity of what the race might look like without a Segai or a Sifan Hassan in there was a little stressful to me a little bit. But kind of as I got through the rounds and seen that I had tools in every respect, like if it was slow, I had really good speed, I had really good strength to push from a long way out. I was a little bit able to simplify that final. The logistics of the championships were different, like that's for sure. But Australian Athletics had done a site visit back in early May, late April, early May, I think. And they kind of relayed the information onto us about what things were going to look like logistically, from hotel transfers to the time on the bus, call room 1 to call room 2, to what track was available under the stadium. In that, like, when I first found out about it in May, it's a little bit stressful because it looks different to anything we've seen before in a championships. But by the time we got there in September and it had that 3 to 4 month period to get my head around it and to practice things like taking a little bit longer in the warm up and taking my time between finishing jogging and running that first interval, I feel like I was pretty prepared for it come the actual championships. And when we got there, the first round, it was actually way smoother and way simpler than anticipated and what sounded like on paper. That by the time we come to the semi, I was very confident. And by the time I ran the 800-meter final on my 6th day of racing, I was like, this is a piece of cake. Like, I know exactly what to expect.
You showing everyone where to go.
Yeah.
Follow me.
It felt a bit like that after the first round of the 1500, like relaying to some other Australian athletes, and Andreas Almgren was quizzing me about like what it looked like and stuff and how long you could keep your water bottle for, that I kind of felt like I was the guinea pig and I'd passed on all the good knowledge to the rest of the championships.
And how much was that double shaped by the order of the events, like the 15 being first? And was it just a bit of a free hit then with the 800 second?
Yeah, definitely. I think 15 being first, I always wanted to have a second event. I would have loved that in Paris last year was the championships experience in a way. Like the Olympics for me, the 1500 was all business, and it wasn't until I crossed the line and took the victory lap that you start to take the stadium in. And I would have loved to have had an opportunity to come back like 2 days later and run a different event for the sake of really, really enjoying it and enjoying the Olympic experience outside of like the focused honed in on trying to medal. So yeah, the 800, I probably thought coming into this year that if I was going to double, it would be the 5K. But having run some 800s in the Grand Slams and even my first one going so well in Jamaica, that just kind of gave me the standard. And having the standard for an Australian team is like the hardest part. Like for us, our selection is outside of the national champs where first and second are kind of in play. It's very discretionary. So having that standard in my pocket was pretty important. So getting that in Jamaica is like, well, maybe we should look at the 800. And then the landscape of the 8 in the early season was interesting as well with that Keely racing and Mary Mora was like not really firing, especially when we were competing against each other in the Grand Slam. It was kind of like, well, like if I can run an 800 to my potential, like there could be a finals berth there. So that kind of started to spark the idea, but I really didn't expect to get the selecting spot because I was the fourth fastest and it was a secondary event for myself and Sarah, who were the other two in contention. So neither of us had contested at the nationals and Sarah had run faster. So I kind of just thought it would go her way. So when I got the call up for it, I was like, well, I'll just take the opportunity and make the most of it. But yeah, I don't know going forward, like whether that's the exact double I would do. I think it always depends on the programming. And Commonwealth Games going forward next year is definitely that Commonwealth 800 is going to be stacked because you only really lose Sage and Audrey Wero. But you bring back in like Prudence Tegediso or Oratal Noe, who didn't make the final in Tokyo. So I think the Commonwealth 800 is going to be like really spectacular to watch. And if it works with the mile, which is always something I'm going to prioritize, I would definitely explore it again because I've really enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed the door that it's opened of like, what if we try and do some more very specific 800 stuff? Like we saw Georgia Bell really explode this year by focusing on the 800 and then even the image she made from the Diamond League final to the World Championships final by being like very specialized for that 3 to 4 weeks between the two. Very much focused on the 800 when she made her decision. So I'm curious, like it makes me want to try and see what I could do. I don't think 154 is there, but 155 high, 156 low is a little more exciting to me right now than trying to run 14:10 in the 5K to be kind of relevant.
Well, and you go to a championship for an 800 and those rounds come into play and then it shifts back towards kind of your kind of profile with the endurance. I think I love talking to Commonwealth athletes about the Commonwealth Games, and for a lot of people, they don't quite get it. You know, it's a down year next year, but I think, you know, for everyone involved in the Commonwealths, it very much isn't. You know, the Commonwealth Games is fantastic, isn't it, to do?
Yeah, it's really special. And it's like growing up as an Australian athlete, and I'm sure you guys were the same, it's like it's on TV and it's like it's almost like staged as though it's an Olympics in a way. So it's like I grew up watching that and wanting to go to the Commonwealth Games one day and sort of being like, maybe I'll be good enough for the Commonwealth Games. And you sort of kind of get that dream, it sparks it. So for me, it's like very important championships. And it almost feels like for athletics in particular, like it's so stacked with kind of the separation of England and Scotland and Wales as well, not just being UK, like there being more spots up for grabs. It almost it makes it harder because there's so much depth, and you sort of look at the 1500 as well, and you could have Jamariki, Laura Muir, Erin Wallace for Scotland, and then you could still have Georgia Bell and Katie Snowden for England. Like it does make it way deeper, and I think it's just kind of like I don't know. I kind of feel this like pride in that, like if we can showcase the Commonwealth depth and if we can all commit to the Commonwealth Games, like maybe we give another life to the Commonwealth Games. Like we've sort of seen it be hard for people to put their hand up to host it now, but it's like if we give them this display on like a big world stage, like maybe it's like, oh, this is worth like bidding to host for or investing in for like at least another cycle to come, or maybe more. We'll see. But yeah, I kind of feel like it's our responsibility to show up and perform there as Commonwealth athletes that have grown up benefiting from having that as like a benchmark to kind of try and achieve.
How disappointed are you that it's not in Australia next year? Because I suppose for us, we've got this little like burst of excitement to have it, you know, on home soil. Well, not really for us, is it? It's up in Scotland, so we'll have to be on enemy lines, but ish, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was very disappointing to find out that we couldn't go through with hosting it down in Victoria. I feel like everyone still speaks about Melbourne in 2006 and Craig Mottram, Karen McCann's marathon finish. They're still just like historical moments in Australian sport that kind of as the end of year countdowns and highlights packages come through, you still always see those kind of included in like little snippets or flashbacks. Like they're such monumental moments in Australian sport that it was like, we're really going to give up opportunity to have these again. But Glasgow will be incredible. I think I got a taste with World Indoors and sort of seeing how Laura Muir was received there when she ran the 3,000 with me was really, really special. And you sort of look at the middle distance talent in the 8:15 and same with the men's 15 for the mile, because we're going to run the mile. It is going to be pretty incredible to see the local crowd get it behind us. And I guess we just have to pretend they're cheering for us. I know they'll be very much aligned with their Scottish athletes, but yeah, no, I think it should be awesome, and atmosphere is atmosphere. So you just channel that as though they're cheering for the green and gold.
There's plenty of Aussies here. I'm sure there'll be plenty in that crowd. It'd be quite sort of tight as well, won't it, that stadium? So it'd be interesting to see. I think the atmosphere would be really good, but like not massive, but also just quite intense, which I think would be really good. Just going back to what you were saying before, Jess, if we sort of go right back to where you started your passion for running and watching the Commonwealth Games on TV and the Olympics growing up and everything like that. And I know your dad was a very decent level runner as well. Where did you really get the inspiration to get into this sport? I know we've read that you were quite a sporty kid generally, but when did you start to focus on running and know that you had a great talent for it?
Yeah, I think so. We have a system here called Little Athletics, and it's ran on a Friday night, and you go and you can try every event like shot put, discus, hurdles, high jump. You do it all on a rotating program, and I think that's kind of just where I learned the middle distances. Like it was a 700-meter pack start for me when I was 8 years old. Was just like what I kind of gravitated towards, and I think it's easy to gravitate towards something when you're young and you can like finish in the top couple of athletes or top couple of kids. But then it was more of just like, I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the social aspect of Little Athletics, and I had friends that were really good at the high jump or friends that were good at the sprints. And then I was the distance runner, and you kind of just morph into that. But I think I just had a really great opportunity where it was like, for me, it was, I got to run with my dad before school, which was really fun. And he just made it fun for me. And then having that Little Athletics, that was such a social outlet as well. And it was different because you grow up and you have your school friends and your athletics friends and then your cross country friends as well, that you kind of just have all these different little outlets and pockets that it just like made me really, really enjoy it. And I really loved it, that it was like I kind of just learned to love it and to want to improve. And I think that was just from having like parents and coaches from a young age that were very much about like making it exciting and finding that little piece of improvement, whereas rather than putting pressure on things. So that I learned to take ownership of kind of where I was going with it from such a young age. And I still remember my first coach, he just like used to make a game out of like 600-meter repeats. And it was like, now you see 600s on the program and you're like, wow, it's going to be a tough day. But back when I was younger and training with him at like 13 or 14, it was like, it was such a thrilling thing to see if I'd broken 2 minutes for a 600. Like he would time us and then he would have us walk back to 50 meters down the track. And it wasn't until like we'd get back to him that he would reveal the split that we had ran. It was like this big, like, oh, 159 today, like you're flying for a 600, that it was like, it kind of just made it fun and it made me like want to improve because it was like enjoyable just to sort of see what we could do and just to see how much we could step forward. So yeah, I think it was very much like just having a great people around me that helped me learn to love the sport for what it was rather than like trying to run or place at state championships. It was like very much like, let's enjoy the process, and you never know how far that can take you.
Do you think you've always been able to keep that joy with running and training? Have there ever been moments where has it disappeared for times?
In a way, it's like, it's very interesting you ask that, because I feel like the 800 in Tokyo kind of re-sparked a joy that maybe was missing from some of my racing this year, in a way that like I hadn't recognized it until like the semi-final of the 800, and that feeling that I'd had from putting together like a very good race by my standards. And I think you can see it in my reaction in a way too. It's just like I didn't know that was missing until I kind of had it with the 800 in the semi-final, and it kind of just has made me realize like I need to carry that into all of my racing. And it helped me when I've reflected on the season to be like, okay, maybe I was putting a little bit of pressure on racing this year to kind of like level up again. Whereas like I should have maybe been enjoying kind of like that rise and that position I was in the season a little bit more so than I was. So yeah, I think it was something I didn't realize I was lacking a little bit this year until I got a reminder with the 800. So I was very, very grateful for that. And it's something I definitely will be consciously trying to reincorporate into the indoor season and the outdoor season with my 1500 area now. But apart from that, I can't really recall like ever really not enjoying it. Like I think I've always enjoyed it in the moment. In that I've always kind of like wanted to race, and I've always really looked forward to the next race and the work and progress that you make between races. But yeah, I think upon reflection, maybe some of that joy was missing a little bit earlier this year in the 1500, because it was just very much like probably a little bit too business-like for me.
What about the balance, Jess? 'Cause I think again I've read when you moved back to Australia, maybe the intensity in terms of your general life, you could find a better balance there. And maybe
Yeah.
were you saying before, you were thinking when you're in this by the end of your time in the USA, it's pretty difficult to switch off.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of that too came with that it was such a different environment with COVID as well, in that like we were very restricted and isolated, and I hadn't been home for so long due to the Australian quarantines, that I think it kind of like did exaggerate that feeling of like being on training camp all the time, because I was literally just stuck in Portland in a way. I didn't have that outlet of going home at the end of the season and then coming back refreshed and ready to train for the next year, because it would have involved a 2-week quarantine. So I think I had just probably spent too long consistently away from home. And if anything, like I'd left like the Tokyo Olympics like pretty hungry for what was to come, like very satisfied with being an Olympic finalist, but not necessarily like okay with kind of how I raced in the final, which I think then fed into me putting a lot of pressure on 2022 to like capitalize on that. And then 2022 didn't go entirely my way with just COVID at the wrong time. That I think it probably just accumulated that by the end of that season, when I was back in Portland, it just felt like, wow, I can't even like move on from this, because I'm just like stuck in my like training camp environment kind of thing, because I still hadn't been able to go back to Australia. That kind of, once I got that chance to go home in 2023, it just like showed me, okay, maybe I need to find a way to do this from here, because it's way more sustainable, mentally long term, to be around my family and to be closer to home and in an environment that is really familiar with me, and running where I'd ran when I was growing up, and really found that love for it.
Mhm. And you spent a big period of your life in Oregon, going to university and then training professionally there. That move home, did that feel like was that hard to do? Did you feel like you were taking a risk, kind of leaving what we're all told is the professional setup and the dream, to go back home? Did you feel like you were having to justify it to people, or were you totally happy with the decision?
I think I didn't really feel like I needed to justify it, but I definitely wanted to showcase that it worked, kind of in a way of like my racing kind of doing the talking and everything. Like I think the hardest conversations I had to have was definitely like with Pete, because that's like there's not really a reason to leave beyond like I just felt like I needed to be at home. So I feel like that was like once we both understood where I was coming from, that like was like okay, like now I can just focus on the training piece and trying to let the racing do the talking with the coming home. But I also think too, it's like in the whole scheme of like my lifespan as an athlete, like I was just ready for that moment in 2023 to like I kind of had learned so much about what it takes to be professional from training with Pete and training alongside Donovan Brazier and Constance Klosterhalf, and that I felt equipped to like put my setup around me that I needed and that I knew could be successful. So I think it's like for that 3 to 4 years that I was training with the group in Portland post college, it was like I learned so much. I almost learned to dream bigger in a way. Like when you're surrounded by people that expect to medal, it makes you have that mentality as well. It's like, okay, I don't just want to make a team. I don't just want to make a final. Like it's about the medals and trying to achieve what I can in the sport. So I feel like I learned so much from them that when the time I was coming home in 2023, I was just ready for it. And I knew what I needed around me, what I didn't need around me, and like just how to make it work. And there's definitely some teething things like that first summer where you travel to Europe without like a group around you and you're kind of making it up as you go. It's different. But it's like definitely like I kind of just learned like having a training partner with me at all times is important. So I do my best to kind of put that in place every season now with bringing a younger male athlete away with me. And I've been very lucky to have some great people accompany me and follow my dreams and pace me and train with me and just be that person where I can kind of run ideas by on runs and stuff too. That, yeah, from Finlay the first year to Harry last year and then to Archie this year, I've just been really, really lucky kind of who's jumped at that chance. And I think as long as the training piece is taken care of, I can find good physio and stuff wherever I'm training. That it was very much like once I learned how to structure the season, I felt pretty confident in what we were doing. And yeah, I think 2024 was the first year that kind of people got to see what I was really capable of, but it was all step towards through what we learned in 2022, 2023.
Well, in that 2024, I'll always remember your fourth in Glasgow in the 3K, and that was your highest finish in a global race. But you were disappointed. And I remember thinking, like, blimey, there's been some shift there in Jess Hull. There's been a shift in her mentality. Like, she's not just happy to be a part of these finals anymore. You know, I found that really interesting that you were disappointed in that. And that, it seemed to be a real turning point for me.
Yeah, that fourth place in Glasgow really, really hurt. And I can't pinpoint why, because it's like we ran so fast that night too. And I was really happy with the time, but just like I think I went in believing I could medal for the first time, so that when I didn't, it really, really stung. And it's like I couldn't really fault my race. Like there was nothing I could have done better based on where I was in training and what we were looking at for the whole year. In total, it's like I did everything I could and it still wasn't quite good enough. But I think that's kind of the jarring thing for me. But it did just spark some new ideas and like reaching out to Steve Cram at the time for some help with some mentoring and going back and forward and really sort of having like someone else outside of our group just look at my training and sort of be like, okay, you guys aren't missing anything. Like sometimes things just take time. And just having some fresh ideas or just some fresh reassurance that we're on the right trajectory. It just doesn't happen all in one go. But I think that fourth place in Glasgow really, really spurred the summer. And even moments on that Olympic final last year where it was like, you're not going to be fourth again. Like you are coming home with hardware, like commit to this. Just like be patient, but commit to this. I think it was like a race that as much as it stung for a few weeks afterwards, it was like a race that I really needed to just kind of level up and to realize like almost to let myself catch up with like where my own expectations had gone to. Expecting to medal is one thing, but actually doing it is so much harder.
The interesting thing there, Jess, that is I'm finding that when we talk to athletes, the fourth place finish seems to be such a driver for future success. And there's several people who have said the same thing, where exactly what you just said. We spoke to Evan Dunphy, who won a world title in race walking in Tokyo, and he said exactly the same thing. I'm not finishing fourth again. And that feeling of being so close to the medals and that switch that it can have in your mindset, that passion, the drive that you can go up another level, does it sort of unlock something that you don't really realize that you have?
Yeah, I think so. Like it's not something like if you had have said to me at the start of the indoor season, like in 2024, like right before I ran at New Balance with Ellie St. Pierre, if you said you're going to run 8:24 and come fourth in Glasgow, I probably would have been like, yeah, wow, that's a huge step, and that's like I'd be pretty happy with that. Like you always want to go further, but like I would never have suspected I'd be disappointed with it. And it's kind of just something that I had to go through and like to feel and to really let it sink in of like I am really disappointed with fourth place and I don't quite know why. And I think it was just because like I said, sort of thing was like having that belief of like thinking you can medal is like a huge step in itself that you've unlocked is like, okay, I'm not just here to make up the numbers now. Like I think there's a medal there, but it's almost like then when you let yourself think that, like when you miss it, it really, really stings. So I think I, in one hand, had grown up a lot in that I was starting to be like, okay, I can medal, but I hadn't also realized like what happens in like in navigating almost that sense of disappointment if you don't, and kind of then learning how to use that as a motivation versus like something that just crushes you. So I think for me it was lucky in that I had to come home and I had to run some races in Australia in terms of setting myself up for Olympic selection, that it was almost like, well, I have had my 2 weeks here where I've just kind of like felt funky about it, but I have to get on another start line and I've got to put it away and just move on. And it almost became a theme of last year where I had some big moments and some scary moments, but everything started happening so fast that I just had to learn how to adapt and to grow up with things as they were happening. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful for the fourth place and just how it taught me to navigate like, okay, my expectations are up here now, but I need to also know how to manage things if I slightly miss and to repivot towards, okay, what's next.
Would you describe yourself as an impatient person? Because just going back to that conversation you said you had with Steve Cram, where, you know, sometimes it is just, yes, the process is in place, you're doing all the right things, it just takes time. And I often think this, obviously not for an elite athlete mindset, but just generally in life, sometimes you just have to let it be, don't you? And give it space and time to grow and keep doing what you're doing. But it doesn't make it any easier. It's so frustrating when people are like, oh, you'll be better in time.
Yeah, no, I think patience as an athlete is something not many of us have. But I think I'm also like, I don't know, I am a big student of the sport and I am always pretty intrigued to like see how athletes that I really looked up to have done things and kind of like following Laura Muir's path and sort of seeing how long it took for her to medal and then Faith Kipyegon being like at her best in her early 30s here. And it's like, there's so many different ways to do it. So I feel like I just kind of I try and align to someone that has done it that way previously, or I'll look for it to kind of validate things. Because like, I mean, we sort of saw what Georgia Bell did last year, and it's like, I know she's spoken about it since for this year too. It's like almost what happened last year was like easy for her, but then backing it up this year gets harder and harder, that it's not kind of like the normal way to do things. So I feel like I've just always sort of searched for someone who's had a trajectory like me or took a long time to land that first medal after a lot of attempts and just tried to be like, okay, it's just taking time like that. And I mean, Laura Muir was so patient with it and eventually she got her Olympic silver, world bronze that I was like, okay, I'm still on the course, just stay patient.
Well, and also in a way, I guess it adds value in some sense. I guess, again, going to my non-elite mindset, I would always think like the best is yet to come. If I know that these people are a few years older than me and still producing their best, how exciting to know that I'm still aiming towards that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really cool time to be an athlete because you're just seeing with all the technology, all the research, like there's not really a true window of like it's over right now. Like it's kind of like we're seeing athletes go for longer and stay in the middle distances for longer. That it is kind of really motivating. It's like, okay, there is time. And even like sort of I had a friend when I was training in Seattle in January this year and I had a friend ask me like, are you still motivated for more, like off the back of a silver? And I was like, I really am. Like, I really am motivated to be better and to run PBs and to try and win a gold at some point. But I really don't think anything could ever feel as good as that silver did. Like, I think that being the first medal of like years and years of trying for it and then kind of being in that position to medal and actually executing it. Like, I don't think even a gold could feel that good. Like that's so fulfilling. But like the self improvement and stuff that I'm still searching for is definitely like very, very motivating. But I think that initial feeling of like, okay, I'm a medalist and I'm an Olympic medalist, like I don't think that can ever be topped. But I think just kind of like continuing to improve and see where I can take myself is what is exciting. And I think you sort of see that with like moments like my 800 where it's like I surprised myself again, and I feel like I almost surprised myself over and over again in 2024. That you obviously can't do that all the time, but to then sort of have the joy of like, oh wow, I really exceeded my own expectations again. I don't know, it just hooks you and it keeps you coming back searching for that feeling.
Mhm. We shouldn't gloss over that silver in Tokyo because it was, obscene how brilliant, how fantastic that whole race was, and for you to come through to the silver. And we're talking about patience here, from Glasgow to Paris, but in our sport, you don't get to write your own timelines. That calendar rushes up on you. That Olympic final, you can't move it. It's only on one day. And you might have had a bit of patience there, but there was also a determination and a timing that was perfect. You look at your 350 at the Paris Diamond League, of going with Faith Kipyegon and not giving in and surprising everyone there, and then through to Tokyo like that. That must have taken some real mettle and real determination to force yourself onto that program after the disappointment of the fourth.
Yeah, I think it was really like I kind of think I look at May, June, July last year as like just huge steps, and like you ride the roller coaster of those steps at the same time. And it's like I kind of arrived in Europe, went to St. Moritz for the first time in a few years, and really committed to a big altitude block. And then I didn't really know what I was going to get come Paris Diamond League, but it was very much like a free swing for me in that I had all the Diamond League points wrapped up that I needed for the final in Brussels after the Olympics. And I was very fit. Like I just had a huge training block that I was really proud of. That I was like, I have an opportunity here to just commit to faith and just see how far that can take me. And I think I sort of anticipated getting to 600 to go and her starting to pull away. But then with every step that I was staying with her, I was like growing in confidence that it's like, oh, like I'm still here. And then even like when Faith looks back in the race at like 450 to go, because I accidentally clipped her and she looked back like, who, someone's still here. Like moments like that, I just grew in confidence with them that it was very much like I kind of finished that race and absolutely the time was exciting and things, but it was very much like, oh, I've arrived. Like I've finally been able to showcase like what I'm capable of. And then to have the opportunity to go to Monaco like 6 days later and go for the world record in the 2K, it was like I kind of really had to grow into that like arrival piece very, very quickly because I was turning it around with another race. And I think then I kind of put myself in our holding camp with Australian Athletics from Monaco to Paris Olympics. And I was just in a bubble of people that I've known for a really long time and around athletes that I've shared teams with all the way back to World Juniors with Nina Kennedy and Curtis Marshall, Matt Denny, Nicola Olashsagas, like, and we were all kind of like in this position where like we're touted as medalists, that it's like I had just had a really great group of people around me to share that kind of pressure and excitement with of like, hey, we have some real opportunities to do something in the Olympics here. That by the time I went into Paris, I was just excited to start. And I think almost it is important for Australian athletes in a way that like we are removed from the pressure of our media in a way because we're so far away on the other side of the world for so long. So I hadn't really experienced that like expectation from Australia until after the final, and I was able to reflect on like, oh wow, people like thought this was a guaranteed medal, and I was like, it certainly was not when you know the landscape of the women's 1500 internationally. That I'm really proud I was able to deliver, but I'm very, very glad that I didn't know it in the moment, that I was kind of just able to enjoy that Olympic experience and build through the rounds and to just to get to that point going into the final knowing like I can medal here and I just have to like stay calm and stay in the moment. And I could see how much growth that had happened even in that final, kind of glancing up at the screen with 400 to go and seeing that there was still 7 or 8 of us there. I feel like 12 months earlier that would have really stressed me out, but the athlete I arrived in Paris Olympics as was like prepared for that and prepared to fight beyond the bell and to kind of be like, I'm not going to miss out on that medal. That it was very much like just kind of, it showed so much growth mentally and physically to be able to handle a big stage like that. And I think the fourth in Glasgow really, really fueled it and just forced me to learn from it, to not repeat it.
Well, we've talked about future aspirations. We've talked about the fact that this is an event where loads of the top women right now have kind of done it, you know, later in their career. We've talked about pressure of home expectation. If I just said Brisbane 2032 to you, Jess, like, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I don't know. Hey, like it's like one of them things where I've sort of said to my dad and Daniel, my husband, that like it's very different to be in an Olympic cycle that for the whole way through to LA, you're thinking about that perfect day and hopefully like setting yourself up to be in contention for a gold in LA. Like to me, I love the sport inside and out, and it's like, but do I have that mental capacity to go on after this Olympic cycle if that's kind of been my driving force for a whole 4-year cycle versus kind of growing into that potential of a medalist within a month of the last Olympics? Like it's like that was tiring. Like I can't imagine what the feeling in at the end of a 4-year cycle thinking about a medal feels like. Like I'm very conscious of that. And I think for me, it's like Brisbane 2032 is definitely on the cards physically, but it's like emotionally and mentally, if I still can like take myself another 4 years, that's kind of the part that I would really consider kind of thing, going into like what could be a home Olympics. But I love that I'm in the 1500 for another Olympic cycle because I think it leaves the 5K, 10K on the table for 2032 versus like having to look at the marathon. I think when we first got Brisbane, I kind of was like, oh yeah, I'll be in the marathon by then. But there may still be track options if I decide like, okay, I've got the capacity to go on for another Olympic cycle here.
I want to come back to that with roads in a minute. That's it. You unlock something, but just on the cycles, the 4-year cycles. I don't know if you've seen, but Seb Coe has said he's pretty confident that cross country will be in the Winter Olympics schedule by 2030. And I wonder, with athletes who are sort of the middle to longer distances, whether almost having that because that's going to be every 2 years that you have an opportunity then to win an Olympic medal, and whether that might change the mindset a little bit to help you keep going. You'd have something really to aim at for an Olympic medal every 2 years. Could that change things for you? And just in that idea, for someone like you, cross country and the Winter Olympic Games, that sounds like it would be something that you might be keen on.
Yeah, definitely. I think I love cross country. Like I definitely prefer that we can run a 2K relay now as a middle distance athlete instead of the 10K. But I think like just the more opportunities we have on a global stage, it does like it makes those years go quicker, and it does kind of like you kind of get there before you realize. So having the opportunity to kind of be cross country, have that in the Winter Olympics, I think it does give life and everything to everyone's career because it's not very much about like, okay, I've got to wait another 4 years for that moment. It's like, well, if you really want it, there's another opportunity there in 2 years, and it just is a good filler that you kind of could come through that and be like, I can go another 2 more years rather than kind of finishing in LA and being like 4 years until we get another chance. It would be really cool to see cross country come in, and yeah, I don't know how they would feel about like if it has to be the 10K or if there's like a short course, long course kind of thing, or the relay makes it into the Olympics. But yeah, I think it's something that I would definitely be really, really keen on. And I always, anytime there is a chance to put on the Australian jersey, like I'm going to take it. So it's something that I'd love to see happen. You've got my vote with that.
we'll pass it on. No, like we're that well connected. And when you talk about committing to LA at the 15, and that makes sense with the improvements you've made over the 800, and but then I'm also, you touched there on the mental fatigue kind of coming into Tokyo that you maybe didn't even realize till afterwards. Like, if you're going to stick at 8:15, like what do you do to keep it fresh then? Like what does Jess Hull do in the next 3 years to ensure you can get all the way to LA, with that mental energy and that excitement?
I think it's just picking races that I really enjoy and that really stand out to me on the calendar, and I think even to just practicing different things in racing. if I look back at a lot of what I did this year was like I essentially time trialed a lot. Even if I wasn't necessarily like the Grand Slams were quite challenging for me because it's a different style of race than I am used to. That I think it was almost like it kind of made me retreat back to the time trial style once I hit the Diamond League circuit and having the opportunity to kind of like have some say over the pacing and to have a say over who the pacemakers even were sometimes was like a really cool experience. And it showed like I have leveled up beyond like kind of just reading the board in the hotel and being told this is the pace today. Like it was quite cool to kind of have a bit of a say. But I think in a way, I think I just genuinely enjoy racing. And I think it kind of, when I do reflect on the big season, I think keeping it fresher for me is just like it's figuring out how to navigate fields and how to win. And it's like it's not necessarily time trialing week in, week out. And I did it across a range of different distances, but I think for me next year will be a little bit more focused on like trying to finish like really high up in fields and trying to win versus like necessarily always having a big swing at trying to run fast. I think for me, keeping it fun is like just figuring out how to race versus like trying to oversend it every time I step on the track. So I feel like things like that are just going to keep it fresh over time and doing things like I'm really, really excited for the World Cross Country Relay. Like I think for me that just like the 4x2K as an Aussie, like we had such a great experience in Bathurst with a home crowd that I'm like, I want to go back for that. Like that's in Tallahassee, I think it would be incredible. So having things like that at the end of like my base season, essentially like October, November, December is the base work, but knowing that that's kind of the first thing we're going to line up for next year, like that keeps the base exciting because it's like there's a purpose to it. So I feel like just always kind of knowing where we're going with the season and what we're building towards, and then just learning to race a little bit more dynamically than relying on like the big swings. I think that's going to be what keeps it fresh and just continue to develop my wheelhouse in all areas. It's like I still have some weaknesses I can work on, that's for sure. So I think that is like when you're always kind of trying to sharpen different swords, it just like time flies. Yeah. So I think that will be a big piece towards LA.
You mentioned the innovation there of Grand Slam track and I guess the general differences that it brought. Is there overwhelming or any residual disappointment in how the fallout has gone since then? And I guess we're still sort of learning all the repercussions of it.
Aside from your bank balance, maybe.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, the bank balance, but you never know, that might come through. But no, I think it was for me, regardless of how it all turned out, like the 800s were a huge step in my development and kind of having those guaranteed starts in 800s were important. I think it's not an area that I've looked at to really try and bring on in the past in my career because it's just like to basically to get into the Diamond League 800s or even a gold meet 800, like the standard is so high and I just never had a time on the board that like reflected that I deserved a lane essentially. So I feel like for me the 800s were a huge piece of why the Grand Slam was appealing, and with or without payment, like I got a lot from having those. So I kind of reflect on it as like it was really valuable in introducing the 800 into my range. And then even things like Nikki Hiltz and I, after our semi-final in Tokyo, like that was extremely tactical and physical for us. And I do think that it's probably one of the best races I've ever run, even though it was quite slow by the standards that we run at the moment. But Nikki and I both took a moment to sort of be like, wow, like there's a lot that happened with Grand Slam, but we both really benefited from having those Grand Slam races come World Champs when our heat and our semi were back towards that technical style of racing, more tactical versus time trialing. So I think there was good and bad that came with Grand Slam, but at the end of the day, I think going into Tokyo, I was definitely better for having those Grand Slam experiences. So yeah, innovation in the sport is good, and we're always all calling for it. So we can't fault them for trying. But yeah, I don't know that it's like something that is going to come back next year. I think we're all waiting to see that. But for now, I think it was very much like I just got a channel that it did really help set me up for World Champs.
Before we finish, Jess, got to go back to asking you about the marathon. We
knew this was coming.
Floating this idea. So, are you Is it something you can see yourself doing eventually, moving to the halves, the marathons? Is that something you want to do?
I used to say yes, like I used to just not
And
even
then you ran,
hesitate to say yes,
157 and
because it is like just something like I love the sport so much. Yeah, and then this year we went back to the 800 and I'm like, maybe never. No, I definitely I love the sport so much that I sort of saw it as my ticket to longevity of like it's inevitable that we're going to have to move up at some point, and if I want to go all the way through to the marathon, like I can stay, like this can be my job forever really, because it's like it's just a cool way to see the world and to live your life kind of in this just like sometimes in the holding pattern of hard training, but like I truly do love it. So I think it's something I thought was more on the cards until we've sort of really analyzed it, or I've gotten like I am 28 now, and I'm like my lifetime on the track in years past might not have had that much more left in it, but I think like we're seeing like I may be able to kind of stay on the track a lot longer than I initially thought. That I don't know. I kind of joked to my husband that my retirement year is going to be all of the major marathons. And just go make like while I'm still like relevant enough to kind of get like a priority start. I'm like, maybe we should hit all of those major marathons. And he's like, you're on your own with that one. Like that's not that's not his retirement plans. But no, I don't want to rule it out. But at the moment I don't have plans to move there anytime soon. And my dad sort of says he's like, if you go to the marathon, that's my coaching retirement. Like you can find someone else to get you to that point. He's very much like track is where it's at. So yeah, I think it's another thing that sort of follows that same question of like, is there a Brisbane 2032? It's like, is there a marathon life for me? Yeah, it just depends on how much enjoyment I'm still getting from the sport and if I still have that passion to get out the door every day. But as a recreational runner in the future, absolutely. Like running will be a part of my life forever. So yeah, whether it's an elite start line in a marathon or out with the masses, running 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, then yeah, we'll see.
Hannah, this is where you went wrong. You should have retired
Oh,
and taken
no,
up marathons. Come on
no,
now.
I am not. I'm not a marathon runner. I think maybe if I was from the same nation as the likes of Jen Lacaz and Eloise Wellings, maybe
Yeah.
I would be inspired. Yeah, you got some great role models that have recently done great transitions onto the roads. But yeah, I would suck. And I think it's exciting to hear you talk about World Cross as well. And just for the record, the Brits were the only non-African nation to get a medal, and that was in the mixed relay where they got a bronze across the whole championship. So as long as we can we can both get a medal, that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. And even if you look at like, if you look at the men's 1500 too, like there are a lot of nations that can really field some good teams if their athletes prioritize this. So yeah, I'm super excited for it. I think it's especially the course in Tallahassee might be a little bit of an equalizer for the world in a way. Like yeah, it won't be quite as predictable as maybe what we've seen from other nations in the past. That it's like very much like we could have Kenya, Ethiopia, Great Britain, Australia, the US, like all in contention there on that final leg. So I think that's really exciting for the sport, and it definitely, I don't know, more eyes on it. Just it creates the buzz. So
Totally. And we will be talking about it all here on Podium. So do not miss an episode. But Jess, can we just say thank you so much for taking so much time to talk to us? So fascinating. And we learned so much. And hopefully you'll come back and, I don't know, visit us again soon.
well, I would love to. Thank you. Thanks for having me on it. It's really fun to just kind of like debrief the season like this. I feel like I learn more about myself every time I do these kinds of things. So I really appreciate the invite. Thank you.